Hi, my name is Rishikesh. I work in IBM out of Bangalore, India. I work in the team that's responsible for deploying data warehouse products like DB2 and Netezza on cloud. I am excited to be part of Stack 2020. The Kubernetes platform is supported by multiple cloud providers, EKS on AWS, AKS on Azure, IKS on IBM Cloud. Here, I would like to share our experiences as our team went through migrating a data warehouse product on Kubernetes platform on different cloud providers. Everybody knows the difficulties of monolithic applications. It's very difficult to evolve and maintain different parts of the application separately. So people are moving to microservices, but microservices has its own challenges. It has to manage multiple microservices and also has to think, and people have to think about scheduling multiple microservices. So the 12 factor methodology actually comes to the rescue. This is a set of best practices during coding, best practices during deployment, and best practices during operation. And Kubernetes supports the 12 factor methodology right out of the box. There are different ways to use Kubernetes. You can deploy Kubernetes yourself. Kubernetes consists of control plane and compute plane. Both have to be maintained by you if you deploy it, or you can delegate this responsibility to the cloud provider, which is quite easy to do. In this, we talk about the Kubernetes, which is deployed by the cloud provider itself. In reality, people think that just coming up with a set of images or creating images out of the monolithic applications and creating some containers out of these images is all that is required to migrate to a microservice architecture. But it may not be that easy for a stateful application. Maybe for a stateless application, it might be comparatively simpler. Here, we would like to discuss more about what might be required by an administrator to actually migrate his application from a monolithic application to a microservice application. For a cluster to be actually production ready, a Kubernetes administrator has to set up many other things, including designing network topology, access control, dynamic node provisioning, storage class setup, load balancer setup, health check monitoring, alerts, CI/CD, logs collection and diagnosis, security, hardening, and billing. Here we would like to explain what we did, and some may be specific to each cloud provider, and many are generic across different cloud providers. The first step in cluster creation is defining the network topology. It involves creation of VLAN or VPC, adding subnets and CIDR blocks. Worker nodes belonging to the cluster are actually created in this network. As per the CNI specification, networking between containers of any pod must be able to communicate with any other container without any NAT. Each pod will get its own cluster IP. The CIDR and the option to use the overlay network has to be passed to the cloud provider during this cluster creation itself. Many applications also need to talk to networks outside VPC / cloud. So the administrator has to think about creating a tunnel between the cluster and the customer network. There might be legacy applications like common logging, monitoring, or access IAM related applications. With this setup, also the administrator has to make sure that the pods are not accessible to the outside world directly. So some kind of firewall mechanism has to be set up. And without a network policy, any pod in the cluster can access any other pod to the cluster. So to restrict this pod to pod communication, the administrator has to set up a network policy using a policy engine like Calico. In addition to all this, there might be data intensive bandwidth intensive applications that might require some other changes on the worker nodes itself, like the MTU size change or jumbo frame settings. The administrator has to make sure that these changes are also done. Coming to the differences, in EKS, a cluster is usually deployed within a VPC. AWS provides VPC CNI integration where the pods and the nodes can share the same network. This is achieved by ENIs for node and using secondary IP ranges of nodes for each pod. Security groups are used to control external traffic to the cluster. In IBM IKS, the cluster is deployed in a VLAN. So IBM is recently added a support for VPC2. IKS supports overlay network for pod-to-pod communication. Flannel or Calico can be used. External access to the pods are restricted. Machines and pods are restricted using an appliance called Viata. In AKS, the cluster is deployed in a VNet, Azure Virtual Network. They also have the option uh, for pods and nodes to share the same network, just like in AWS, and any external access is by default denied. The only way to expose the pods to the outside world is through load balancer. The next important thing for an administrator is to set up the access to the users, the right authentication and authorization. Any request to the API server has to pass 4 levels: TLS security, authentication module, authorization module, and admission controllers. So pods running on the cluster can also access the API server. Each pod has to have a service account to access the API server. Normal users are usually managed outside Kubernetes. They do not have any objects in Kubernetes to represent any users, but there are objects to represent the service accounts. So usually for users, the cloud provider's authentication mechanism is integrated into the Kubernetes cluster. So next, how we have something called the role bindings. Role binding defines the association between a role and a user or a group or a service account. The role actually describes what operations a user can do on a particular resource. Sometimes in organization, they want to use their legacy LDAP systems uh, along with Kubernetes instead of creating everything new. So in that case, they can achieve this by syncing their LDAP with the cloud provider's authentication service. The additional advantage of using this way is that you also maintain an audit trail for access requests and approvals, and also what the user user as what actions a user has performed. So now coming to the different cloud providers, in EKS there is a config map called AWS Auth, which to which the administrator needs to add every user. AWS provides MFA, Heptio MFA authenticator. AWS provides additional cloud provider specific access policies also. The granularity is a little more for the roles in EKS. In IKS, there are a set of predefined platform roles that comes out of the box, which can be used, and role bindings can be created between the users and these roles. Custom roles also can be added separately. There are APIs to map users between legacy, LDAP, and Kubernetes RBAC, and also the MFA is supported. AKS is integrated with Azure Active Directory. So cloud provider CLI UI provides APIs to view, create, and update roles. MFA is also supported. In a managed cluster, the control plane is managed by the cloud provider itself, but the responsibility of the worker node lies with the administrator, like procurement, selecting the right CPU memory, whether it's a virtual machine or a bare metal, upgrades, security patches, and in some cases he may has to add additional kernel modules and change some configuration settings on the worker nodes, and also has to release the worker nodes if not in use. In EKS, stacks with auto-scaling group can be created using the CloudFormation templates. All the configuration parameters can be set there, and the AMI can be specified in the CloudFormation template. AMI is Amazon Machine Image, just like a Docker image. AMI is used for creating a machine where the configuration is all set. But the problem is, like during upgrades and security patches, a new AMI has to be built and applied on all the worker machines. Additional nodes can be procured just by increasing the count on the auto-scaling group parameter. In IKS, the bare metal support has been existing for a long time before it's come on any other cloud provider. So the DB2 warehouse on cloud service, we used to work, actually used bare metal machines for better performance. And to initialize the machine here, we use something called a privileged daemon. The daemon creates a pod that runs on each of the worker nodes, which sets the worker nodes to a specific configuration, what's actually required for the workload. The worker upgrades are as easy as just a worker reload. Additional nodes can be added manually or using worker pool management, increasing the scaling the worker pool to which this worker belongs to. In AKS kind of uses a combination between EKS and IKS. A stateful application in Kubernetes require what is called a persistent volume to save any data permanently. Persistent volume is actually mounted into the pod, and this persistent volume actually specifies a storage class. The storage class invokes the provisioner, and the provisioner uses this volume plugin to connect to the raw volumes. The storage, the provisioner and the volumes, there are many out of the box by default, and is also an option to write custom provisioners and custom plugins for the storage services. There are different kinds of storages: the file storage, block storage, object storage. Sometimes storage just needs to be shared across pods. Storages will be used for backup and restore services. So the administrator has to make sure that whatever application / workload is being deployed, has the right persistent volume set up before the application is deployed. There is a concept of dynamic storage provisioning, where the storages are procured just in time. So as soon as an application requires additional storage, it's procured. Sometimes that's not possible because the storage has to be created and procured. So in those cases, storage pool can be used. The applications can be accessed from outside using either ingress, load balancer, or node port. Node port is the most trivial thing, where a particular node port is actually exposed on all the machines of the cluster. That's usually used only during development. The normal practice is to use ingress, where many services can be exposed under the same IP and same domain name. When there is a requirement where you have to use different protocols on the same IP and same port, you can go for a load balancer, or you can create your own custom load balancer using a combination of portable IPs and HA proxy and keep-alive. So all these three are supported by all cloud providers, and whatever as needed by the workload running can use. Thanks for attending. Hope this session was beneficial to you. Thank you.